Tembe. We begin with our headlines. As Cameroon marches towards the 2025 presidential polls, political tremors are emerging in the far north region of the country. The dramatic fallout between Tchiroma Bakari's FSNC and the ruling CPDM is not just a split. It is a signal, as analysts say. Tchiroma's departure could fracture loyalties in a region once considered a CPDM fortress. The streets of Fumbot and Fumban roared with joy as thousands welcome His Majesty Sultan Nabil Mbonjoya back from Mecca. With drums, chants and traditional regalia, the Bamoun people turned their king's homecoming into a spiritual and cultural spectacle. And with salutes, tears and solemn hymns, Cameroon bid farewell to Colonel Francis Lisonge Ekoso in military ceremony fit for a hero. The deputy commander of the National Fire Brigade, who passed away this year, was honored this June 27 in Yaoundé, where comrades in arms and state officials gathered to celebrate a lifetime of patriotic service. Welcome to the 6:15 News, reaching you live from our studios in Douala. And you can hook up with us on our respective platforms on Canal International, reaching you live, of course, from Douala. And we begin, of course, with the story. Tchiroma Bakari's surprise entry into the presidential race is already stirring whirlwind of opinions in Douala, where some are already hailing Mr. Bakari for his boldness. Others have dismissed that boldness and terminated it is a political charade from a former regime. Insider Sherifa Saleh.
Public opinion is divided in Douala following Tchiroma Bakari's recent declaration to run in Cameroon's 2025 presidential election. While some welcome his move as a potential fresh start, others view it with suspicion due to his long-standing ties with the ruling regime.
Personally, I'm not convinced. Right now, he can promise Cameroonians heaven and earth. But what truly matters is whether he will follow through on those promises.
Tchiroma, the leader of the Front for the National Salvation of Cameroon (FSNC) and a former government minister, was for years a close ally of President Paul Biya. His shift to opposition politics has raised eyebrows in Douala. The skepticism is widely shared among many Douala residents who feel disillusioned by repeated political promises that have failed to deliver.
Politics is just a game. Rarely do politicians speak the truth. For someone who has worked closely with the government for years, how can we suddenly trust him? What real change is he capable of bringing?
Still, a portion of the population believes in giving him a second chance. Some argue that his insider experience could help drive meaningful reform.
Je crois aussi à ces réformes et je lui donne évidemment de courage.
Il peut réaliser ses promesses, pourquoi? Parce que
he might deliver on his promises, especially given his experience working hand in hand with the government. And to be fair, he did not perform well. Perhaps we should give him the benefit of the doubt and see what he is capable of doing.
Tout le reste suivra.
The former communication minister has vowed to fight for political freedom, economic revitalization, and the empowerment of youth. His campaign message, centered on change and inclusion, is aimed at attracting young voters and disillusioned citizens.
Thanks very much, Sherifa Saleh. And as Cameroon marches towards the 2025 presidential polls, Political tremors, of course, are only emerging in the far north or the northern part of the country. The dramatic fallout between Tchiroma Bakari's FSNC and the ruling CPDM is not just a split. But then it is a signal, as analysts are saying, that Tchiroma's departure could fracture what is known as loyalties in a region once considered a fortress of the CPDM. Ambo Gladys Diba.
After 16 years of continuous presence in government, Tchiroma Bakari, one of the most visible figures from the north of Cameroon, is charting a new course, stepping away from the ruling CPDM alliance and repositioning his party, the National Salvation Front, FSNC, ahead of the 2025 presidential election. Could this be a political divorce with national implications?
CPDM might go in this election without one of their jokers, Tchiroma Bakari, who is today going to stand as a presidential mandate, not only for himself, but as a liberator of his party members, and why not his entire region.
Indeed, the far north, Cameroon's most populous region, has been a key electoral engine for the CPDM, but without the FSNC backing, turnout and support could waver.
There is going to be a game changer, and that the northern region, which many considered majority of more than 35% of the voting class, might act exactly at the time Cameroon needed for the October polls, which many of us have believed that it was going to be a game changer, and so Tchiroma Bakari might be disturbing that particular function for the ruling party.
The Grand North is a key electoral stronghold of the CPDM. If local elites and party leaders withdraw their support, it will inevitably have a boomerang effect on the CPDM.
Still, political watchers believe the CPDM may not be heading for a decline, at least not yet.
La fin de cette alliance, les militants du FSNC.
In 2018, the Grand North contributed about 47% of the 71% secured by President Biya. Support that was not exclusive to the FSNC. So while the FSNC's departure weakens the CPDM operationally, it does not spell its decline in the Grand North.
As Cameroon edges closer to a high-stake vote, all eyes will be on how alliances shift, how loyalties hold, and whether the CPDM can weather the storm of internal fracture in one of its most strategic regions.
Thanks very much, Ambo Gladys Dibang. And a critical shortage of guidance counselors in schools across the littoral region is already putting this region at a very high risk, as the vulnerability of students to choose or make a pathway towards their academic ladder is becoming more compromising. Now, in the following report, Morindi paints a picture of the important role that guidance counselors will have to play as the students are charting a new path forward. Morindi.
On retrouve des établissements qui sont amoindris en termes des effectivités.
In the CAM division of Cameroon, the absence of adequate guidance counseling services in schools is leaving students without crucial support.
The fact that most of our technical tools resources are getting outdated, which need to be updated. For example, psychological tests which are not adapted, psychotechnical tests which seem not to be adapted anymore to the latest environment.
Ebola, a guidance counselor, has been the sole guidance counselor in her school, a role that is overwhelming given the number of students requiring assistance. This scarcity hampers the ability to provide personalized guidance, address academic challenges, and identify issues that may derail students' educational path.
It's time for us, with the guidance and counselors, to see what they have done and what they have to do concerning all what we are facing as violence and bad work of students in our institutions.
The situation is further compounded by infrastructural challenges. Poor road conditions in suburban areas deter both councillors and teachers from accessing schools regularly. Additionally, limited school budgets influenced by low student enrollment make it practically impossible to hire sufficient counseling staff. This lack of support is particularly concerning given the rising incidence of violence in schools.
A lot of effort is being done to see that these challenges are overcome, and that is the reason, one of the reasons, for example, this evaluation meeting.
Education officials convened in Douala on June 26 to address these challenges. The meeting aimed to diagnose the root causes of school violence and explore how strengthening guidance counseling services could serve as a preventive measure. Experts emphasize that without adequate counseling, students are more susceptible to behavioral issues and academic decline.
Thanks, Maureen. And of course, a devastating fire that has left an entire family in the New Bell neighborhood in Douala in distress. The blaze, which broke out Thursday evening, destroyed a house and, of course, several shops that were nearby. And we are getting reports that the victims are still reeling from the shock. Beatrice is one of the victims, now finds temporary shelter at the neighbor's home with her children. And the community members have gathered to show support. Though the exact cause of the flame remains unknown, it is reported that it started in one of the rooms before spreading. Fortunately, no lives was lost, but the damage has left an entire family without a home and a complete business ruined. And the streets of Fumban and Fumbot in the west region of the country, precisely in the Noon division, actually roared with joy as thousands gathered on the streets to welcome His Majesty the Sultan of Fumban, the Sultan of the Bamoun, Bobo Njoya Nabil, who actually returned from Mecca with drums, chants, and traditional regalia. The Bamoun people actually turned their king's return or homecoming into what is known as a spiritual and cultural festival. Details with Abu Gladys.
It is a rare moment of grandeur in Fumban, the return of a king. After a month in the holy city of Mecca, the 20th monarch of the Bamoun people, His Majesty Muhammad Nabil Mfuremfum Bombonjoya, receives a hero's welcome. From Magum to Kutaba and through Fumbot and Baingom, crowds line the roads. By the time the convoy reaches the Noon Bridge, the excitement is palpable. At the gates of Fumban, thousands of citizens wait in jubilation, waving peace plants while chanting praises. We are celebrating the 78th edition of the return of pilgrims in our land. Today the Sultan is celebrating his first edition of Hajj, and he says he is dedicating this pilgrimage to the Bamoun people. He has a great vision for us. At the ceremonial ground in Fumban, the mood is festive. A communion between ruler and people, between tradition and modernity. The Sultan, clad in royal attire, addresses his people. His voice carries both the spiritual depth of his recent pilgrimage and the political awareness of a nation on earth. He reflects on his time in Mecca, giving thanks to Allah, and reminds the population of the values of faith, unity and resilience. The Sultan also calls for national cohesion ahead of Cameroon's upcoming elections. It is with great satisfaction that we are receiving our king. As you can see, we have been here since morning to welcome him. The royal return is always a moment of reckoning, renewal and unity for the Bamoun people.
What a triumphant entry into Fumban from Mecca. And from the lab to the incubator, Cameroon is taking a bold step into what is known as quantum technology to fight infant mortality. A groundbreaking smart incubator based on quantum theory is now offering what is known as a safe haven for premature babies. Beatrice Ngamo reports from Yaoundé.
The remains of Colonel Ekoso Lisonge Francis draped in the national colors, making way into the explanade of the Yaoundé military headquarters, June 27, 2025. Portrait of the late officer, a reef firefighter helmet, tells of his capacity and service. 28 years of devoted service that marked many lives, the feeling on display here.
Qui a consacré sa vie au service de son pays. Il s'appelait tout simplement Ekoso Lisonge Francis.
Motion and pain filled the air as the commander of National Fire Brigade paid tribute to a close collaborator, praising his remarkable intelligence and high sense of duty.
Adieu. Je te souhaite de reposer en paix, Francis.
At the age of 50, Colonel Professor Francis Lisonge Ekoso, expert at the summit of his work, got the attack of his life, a deadly one, that fateful Sunday, May 18, 2025.
Une fois encore, une fois de plus, une fois de trop.
Then came the hymn of the dead. The solemn sound echoed through the air, marking painful exit.
Nous sommes rassemblés d'abord pour témoigner. Témoigner notre respect, témoigner notre admiration, témoigner notre gratitude pour un soldat de grande valeur.
Goodbye, brave soldier. This then carried him to his Mbankomo residence, where a mass will usher him to the world beyond.
Well, thanks very much, Beatrice Ngamo, for that report on the passing of Colonel Lisonge Ekoso. May he so rest in peace. Further draws the curtain for this edition of the 6:15 with me, Kejon Henry Atimbe, thanking you for being there with us. Coming up is the brief de l'actualité. Matthew Fangwa and his panelists will be handling sports. Good day.